Yeah, see, those are the little things that I'm not sure, and I'm like, okay, I just want to. Okay, so anyways, I think, well, fuck. It says it's recording. I just don't know how Zoom works. I've never used. That's why when I was like, when I had texted you guys originally, I was like, I don't know how this works. I'm like, well, and now like now that if you can hear, cause my thing is like, well, I wasn't sure how long this was gonna take, because then like, did it ask you to download like the software and whatever?
I don't know. It was kind of weird because it just said that my app needed updating, but I've never used Zoom, so I didn't even know that I had an app, or unless this is all just web based. But
Right.
yeah, it said your app needs updating, and it started downloading something, but it didn't. It doesn't seem like it installed a program onto my computer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe it's just an extension within the web browser. I don't know.
Yeah. Dude, this is kind of whatever. However, Zoom is. I guess. How can I phrase this? It's blowing my mind. The fuck Zoom can do.
Okay.
Like just in general, like yes, we've been able to like we could have video chatted like before, because there's a bunch of apps to be able to do that. But I feel like I don't know, I just feel like the way it's designed for my first experience, because it's my first experience, I don't know how else to put it other than like, this is kind of fascinating to me.
Yeah, somewhere I read that it was like Skype, like the one thing Skype was designed to do all these years, and somehow Zoom just took off this year or last year.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know how or why, but even this little like this deal, like the way Zoom, I guess the way I logged in now, that was pretty interesting. Like all I did was just click the link in the email, and I didn't even need to log in. At first, it gave me like a little sign in pop, but then it just said that I needed updating, and it did it on its own. Like I didn't end up logging in or signing up. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how it worked or what, but I feel that for Skype, you would need. I mean, in the past when I used, because I had used Skype in the past, everybody needed like to sign in with their own account. So I don't know. I don't know what the difference is.
Right. Hang on, I'm losing this thing again. Check. Oh, this is super weird. Okay. Maybe I'm just. I might just be deaf. And I'm not really. I mean, I haven't had any like guns go off or anything in my ears like lately. So it's, it's kind of weird.
Not now, but all of the
Yeah, I guess that's the
ear abuse in the past.
Hold on.
Yeah, dude. Sometimes I think I'm pretty fucking deaf.
Go talk real quick.
I constantly find myself asking people to repeat themselves, and it's so annoying. Like it's annoying for me to like have to say it, and it's probably annoying for the other people. Like, man, this guy can't fucking hear me. Like, I know, I'm sorry. And like, well, my thing is that the one thing that I feel like probably has had like the most impact was like in high school, like all the football games sit right in front of the snares.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Where you guys were. Yeah.
Oh man. Like I feel like out of everything, that was probably like the most abusive and consistent like sound to my ears.
Right. 4 years.
Those snares right at like head level, basically.
Yeah.
Because they would stand, and we were sitting.
Right. Yeah. It was just,
what do you call it? The little skirt thingies.
The scoops. I think
it's just freaking like projecting even further. Like
I think like scoop projectors or some shit like that. Yeah. Yep. No. Yeah. Exactly. And I'm actually, it's funny. I'm glad you brought up high school, because I'm really hoping this fucking thing's like recording the proper way. Because I wanted to bring up the first thing I want to bring up is man, it's gonna be hard to do this again if this thing doesn't work. Like it's gonna be really hard to make this conversation happen again, because we haven't talked like this in a long freaking time. But
man. Yeah.
I had this was a while back, but episode 31 from the podcast was just me and you, and we were talking about obviously a bunch of just things, but the video I like screenshot from YouTube and I posted on Instagram, and then you had sent us messages like between me, you, Freddie, and Frank. I think it was on that group chat, but it talked about, or you were talking about how for
Oh,
2019, I think it was 29 for 2019 because I think 28. I think it was 2018.
okay.
It had to be because it was 31, so it was early. It might have been 2017. So I think in the rest of 2017. Here, let me just look it up. Anyways, the point is that you're bringing up like entrepreneurship and how you were gonna
I was like, I
dive
think I know
in
where you're
like head
getting it.
first. I want you to explain how you felt when you saw that video, if you could, or if you remember that when I posted it, like, and you saw it, it's like, what were you thinking?
Yeah, that it was me and you talking, and I was wearing, I think, either like a white and red kind of baseball tee or something.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
was it the comment I made about how like I think about like some of the stuff that I talked about back then, and it just sounds so like intellectual and
you
so
said
like
smart. Yeah, you
mature,
said smart
smart,
intellectual, and I was
yeah,
like,
yeah. And then
right, right,
like
right.
I think of like to some of the conversations I have now, and it's just like,
It was
what
3 years
the
ago, so
heck, like
27. That episode was
what
2017.
happened? Damn, bro.
But it's funny that because I don't disagree, and for me, I feel like it's the fact that I haven't been able to have this type of conversation via podcast. I've tried to have decent conversations even now where I'm at. I'm over here on the West Coast, and I don't talk about my job too much. I leave a lot of that stuff under wraps
Mhm.
because a lot of even now, like I've mentioned that I work in a hospital. And, I do that, so I still mention a lot of the life. I still try to incorporate a lot of the life things. I still think about it. Like this whole moving with life concept for me, it's still constantly moving. You're gonna say something.
Um, I think it was just that like I guess it depends on like the stage that you have.
Mm.
So in a podcast, I feel like maybe whether it's consciously or unconsciously, maybe we're trying to give our most intellectual thoughts and
Right, right, right,
our best advice to this through this platform.
right through the platform.
And when it's to like when it's to your friends that you see every day, or when it's to like a coworker that maybe you're not super comfortable with, like the conversation is different,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so it just depends, on your stage, your platform, that how you kind of get those thoughts across, or what types of thoughts you get across.
Right. Yeah, like I was actually helping one of my friends, but I mean we're coworkers, and I was helping them with a evaluation report they have to do for themselves. Like so we have to write our own certain parts of it, for certain parts of our evaluations,
Hmm.
they're self evaluations, but they have to be genuine. They have to be honest because it's mostly because we had like this particular thing was a strength and weakness thing, and so and it's funny
Gotcha.
because you actually just recently mentioned on Xcelligence the SWOT analysis, right? And that
Hmm.
was one of the first things I asked this person because they're younger, they're like 19 or 20, I think 20 now. So straight out of high school was in ROTC. Straight out of high school joined the Navy, right?
Yeah.
And it's like I'm like, well, have you ever done a SWOT analysis? And she's like, no. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, okay. I'm like, damn it. I'm okay. I'm like, because I remember going over SWOT analysis, like even I think it was like an economics class in high school. I couldn't tell you the teacher, but I feel like SWOT analysis were like still taught to us, like they were taught to us even then.
Yeah, yeah, but I will say that more and more, the older we get and the more conversations that I have with people, I realize that a lot of the things we learn through our like business, like economics, finance classes,
Mhm.
even marketing,
Right.
a lot of the things we learned in those classes through that curriculum applies so well to like real life situations that other people don't get. Like other people don't go through that if they majored in anything else. So, man, I don't know. I was late last year. I was preparing to give a kind of like a financial literacy course
Okay.
to high school seniors.
Yeah.
So I was preparing a lot of these things, and it was like, man, like what, I was starting to realize that I learned a lot of things that you can apply to like at least early adulthood, that you should know how credit cards work, how a mortgage works, or any type of loan, basic like budgeting kind of rules or recommendations. Like a lot of those things that you kind of learn in your business courses, and you don't really get if you don't go through that path. And then it's funny that you bring up a SWOT analysis for like a person, because let's say the way we learned it, it was for your business or your company, but
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting to like apply it personally. And for one, if you don't go through like the business curriculum, you don't even learn what a SWOT analysis is.
Right,
But if you
right.
do go
Yeah.
through it, it's not 100% probability that you'll even apply it to your personal life versus a business,
Right,
your business, the business you work for. So
right.
it's interesting that you can apply that even outside of like the workplace and
Mm-hmm.
apply it to like your personal
Yeah,
life.
and that was the struggle because this person they felt like, well, I don't do anything. I'm like, well, one, don't sell yourself short because this person actually does a lot, and like it's
Hmm.
interesting because I'm actually like one of the oldest people, period. Of aside from some of our other leadership, but even my leader, like he's younger than me.
Okay.
So it's interesting communicating because their retort is always, "Well, you're the adult. Like we don't expect you to know like certain things, but like whenever they tell me that, whenever they say make a comment that like is from the past or something, they expect me just to know if that makes sense. Like because of my age, they expect me to just know
Hey
not
Andy, tell us
everything.
about the Vietnam War.
Yeah, bro, dude, I've been the butt of a joke for the past 2 years now. It's awesome now, but yeah, but it is that because this set, my current leadership, he's always like, uh, yeah, old man. Like, it's always grandpa. It's always old man. He's only 2 years younger than me, so it's not like it's not a big gap. It's not a huge gap versus
Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah.
Some of these other people that I've already met and I've tried to train up for the life aspect because that's what's missing. Even in some of these things that I've been diving into. And that's my whole. That's my whole point of bringing up the SWOT analysis is like the communication is having to explain to said person that was helping last night at work was like, okay, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but it's like you this is what's needed right now. This is what they're asking for, and if we don't get it done, then you're going to have to come back, or they're going to expect they're going to expect you to come back in after we just finished working a whole night. Like there's different things that would come up off the situation, but my point was communicating and even in talking face to face with this person, I was like, man, how can I convey this properly? Because it is kind of frustrating to have to talk about. Okay, for me, it's not. Frustrating is not the right word. For this person, it was frustrating, but for me, it's not frustrating. It's just I'm not good at it. Like because we literally for some of these things, you literally have to talk about yourself. And okay, in my opinion, you want to be as honest as possible on the good and the bad
Yeah.
because that's how you're going to get better. And so it's
Hmm.
having to convey that because I understand it. I'm not gonna say I'm playing the game, but there's little moments like that, like these that happen where it's like that's what separates me from everybody else. Because even some of my leadership that's older than me, but like they've only been in the military their whole life or whatever. Um, I've seen where it just makes a difference. Stop processes. There's nothing outside of what they've learned already because they've been grown. They've been nurtured a certain way. And me have or me, but to include in this conversation, but like having technically 10 years of business in general experience from school, working retail, music, and now doing what I'm doing now, it's
Hmm.
like it I've uh I've seen these little moments in time where it's like, oh yeah, like there's things missing here. How can I help convey so that this person's not frustrated and they can just get this work done so that when the time comes to
Yeah.
leave for the day, because this was also like midway of our shift. We have 12-hour shifts, so it was like midway of our shift. Like it wasn't like it was like last minute. It kind of is like in the last day is due today, like in that sense.
Hmm.
But still, it's not like there wasn't really a time crunch for it, but it needed to get done. And it's like having to convey, like, hey, don't freak out, but we need to get this done. but then like okay, because I do think of like you know I'm trying to think of a Jocko because it's a Jocko example because he always talked about like some of his guys that he worked with when he was with the SEALs and stuff, they hated doing paperwork and like it's like, oh, why do I have to do this? Like this is so dumb, blah blah. And it's funny because not now I actually see that firsthand. It's like, oh, this is what this is what he's talking. This is what he's talking about. And it's like having to convey like, hey, we're just gonna get this done to the best of our ability because if we do it, then they'll actually leave us alone. And it's so nice to not wake up to text messages because it will happen. Like let's say we worked last night, got out at 6:30 in the morning, trying to go to sleep now. Trying to eat, do what I gotta do, go to sleep, and then now I'm gonna be up all night because that's just the way it is right now. But the point is like it's like to not wake up to text messages saying, hey, you didn't do this right. Hey, we need this better. Like this, you didn't follow the format or whatever the situation. It was just the point is communication. Like it's just interesting trying to give an answer that's better than because our leadership said so. It's like, no, how about this might be good for you, and over time I'm going to try to help you see that as we do this more and more, because it's not like even monthly, but just the process of having to do work, because I feel like this is in business and where I'm at as well, but it's like it's like a lot of times I hear, oh, I need you to do this. Why? Because I'm your boss, so you're gonna do it. It's like that's a terrible like I don't know. Yeah. It's a terrible answer from a theoretical standpoint, and me have seen it firsthand because even when I was in retail and I had my bosses and they were like going half a day to work and they were leaving after that, and now that's not the case now. But what I hear in different settings is like, oh, because I said so, or because I am this person in the hierarchy. It's like, well, that's a terrible answer. And you want a 19? I'm 29. You want an 18-year-old fresh out of high school to just do it because I said so? They've been hearing that from their coaches and teachers and parents. Like, it's not gonna work.
Yeah, all their life.
Yeah. So all their life so far, right? Yeah.
It's interesting. Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I remember when I worked at the bank, our CFO, he would sometimes, I'd turn in reports, and he would he would come and question me sometimes. I mean, sometimes I feel like they were kind of like trick questions just to see what type of answer I would give. But one time I think he asked like, why do we calculate this ratio this way? And that's something that sometimes they were trick questions, and sometimes I feel like maybe they were valid because so ratios are generally always calculated like the same way, like
it's an equation.
It's A over B equals C. Like it doesn't change most of the time.
Right.
But sometimes but sometimes I guess there are situations depending on like institution or depending on the reporting party, where they make exceptions, or they exclude certain things from the numbers. So he would ask me, why are we doing this way? And I couldn't give him an answer other than that's how it was. And because one, yes, that's how it is, and like I said, maybe sometimes it was just to see what I would answer, because I could have said something like, well, this is how you calculate the ratio, and this number and this number, tells you this about the company or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, at the time I had no other answer than like, well, that's just how we do it. And he was like, well, that's not good enough. And I'm like, damn. And so starting there is when I started to kind of like questioning everything, which is bad. It's good and bad, because sometimes I'd question even my superiors,
are you
orders
sure?
and requests. Yeah, dude. And yes, like I kid you not, my boss would tell me to do something and be like, well, why? Or what are you trying to accomplish? And I swear, man, he if it wasn't for like HR, he probably would have socked me in the face at certain points. Because he's, the person that I was questioning isn't like the type to just kind of like just take, get that type of, I don't want to call it pushback, but yeah, it was
Yeah,
questioning,
pushback. Yeah.
some of the things he was like kind of ordering me to do it, and I was like, well,
Yeah.
why? But
Right.
I feel like in the long run, it kind of built a little bit more trust between
Mhm.
us, because at some point when I did start questioning things, he would be open to like other solutions.
Hmm.
Like at some point where I proved
Yeah,
myself that I
there was
could
just a
maybe make a better informed decision or something, he was like,
right.
"Well, what do you think?" And sometimes he would call me into his office and ask me like, "Hey, do you know how we can accomplish this?" And that felt good, but I hate that it started with the CFO asking me a simple question and me giving him kind of like a dumb answer, I guess,
Like
because
you mean like
there's a more educated
I'll
way
say
to
unsatisfactory
answer.
answer. That's fair. Okay,
Yeah, but yeah, man,
that's funny.
that man has
Well,
kind of taught me some things.
see, and man, and see, there's some of these macro points that will come up, and they've come up before in our conversations via podcast and off the podcast,
Mhm.
and I guess lately, maybe it's some of it's coronavirus, and I actually want to get into that. I don't know if we're getting to. I don't know if we're getting to it today, but um, just like I still get, like I said, like even at work that I'm doing now and stuff, I still get pulled back into this like macro, like meta, like minds. It's not a mind. It's not a mindset. It doesn't feel like a mindset, but it's like certain things will be said or certain members will come about, and it's like, well, yeah, like this is life. It's learning and doing that pushback. Even if it gets mildly uncomfortable at the beginning, but then the outcome is what you have, what you got, and what you might have now. It's so it,
Yeah,
and those are the things that I've said this before, like in the past, but it's like I'm not trying to find a lot of the answers, but it's like I, I maybe trying to be more present, um, in a lot in more of what I do now as also getting, I only have like 11 months before I fucking turn 30, like that's one of my ticking things, that's one of my ticking things is the fact of like, not that I'm getting old, because I don't feel it at all. Like I'm keeping up with these kids that are like, oh, whatever. It's like, oh, let's do it. But
yeah,
it's the matter of fact of like, maybe it's subconscious that where I do feel that pushback where it's like, okay, these little answers, like, okay, oh, I'm able to pick them out because I am trying to be not hyper focused, but I'm trying to be focused for the long run, for the long term.
yeah, man. Right now that you mentioned 30, I've been kind of telling myself that I'm 30 for like the last year, but I still don't like hearing it.
Yeah,
I'm just like, no, because
dude.
I'm what, like maybe 6 months, 5 months younger than you, but I'm
Yeah.
still like, I'm right there. Like,
Yeah. It's all. I mean, that's what I mean for the past few years. I mean, between like all like our crew that we have conversation with now, even via text and stuff.
mhm.
It's like I'm always the first one, and hey, someone's next. so
Yeah,
someone's next after me. It's not. I'm not alone in this.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah. Oh man, and you know what? I was having a conversation. It was I didn't want to get into too much detail about it,
Mhm.
but it was a hypothetical situation where, what if we just drop everything and move, you know, to Italy, to Spain, somewhere way on the other side of the world.
Yep.
And it was like it, it, it so it was like two plans, right? One of them is stay on course, do what you're doing now, hit the goals that you want to hit.
Right.
Some of the things is like, accumulating real estate and in turn equity and wealth, and stay on
Yeah.
this path, right? And in like maybe 10, 12, 15 years down the line, when that's kind of, stable or at least started, then you can go off and travel the world, do whatever you want.
Yep. Yep.
um but the I guess the danger there is that you get to that stability, and then other things happen, and you never get to leave. You never get to go experience that little life, that adventure that you're craving today.
Yeah, right.
So there's the danger of that. Um, and then that you're growing old and you're kind of resentful. Or the other thing is, what if you just do it now? Do it now, and then when you're kind of fed up of that that adventure, when you scratch that itch, come back and start start that
Right.
plan.
That plan.
Um, and then so the friend that I was talking to, he's like, but what's wrong with traveling? In your 40s, 45. 40 is like the new 20 sometimes. Like, and it's true
Yeah,
because
he's not. Yeah, that person's not wrong.
I've seen it more and more where like some 40-year-olds are looking better than some 20-year-olds and like
Dude. Yeah.
living their life better
There's some
than
stuff
some
I need to tell you
20-year-olds. Like,
offline, but yeah.
so yeah, like it's true. You kind of, in some cases, in certain ways, for some people, they're living a better life in their 40s than they ever did in their 20s.
Yeah.
So very interesting, very
That
intriguing.
thought, right. That thought definitely been coming to my mind too, because like, man, like I never, maybe 3 years ago, I never had goals to say, oh, by the time I'm 30, I need X, Y, and Z. It's never been black and white, because at that time, 2017, 2016, we started the workout process and just everything leading up to now. It was just a snowball effect of like everything that was like, oh, this makes sense. Let me do that. Starting the podcast in 2017. Oh, I actually need to look into this and I need to start this. Okay, cool. Quitting music and doing what I do now. That was a big jump. And so for me at the moment to stay on this track is like, when am I going to stop? Because I haven't necessarily had specific, I do have meta personal goals and I'm working on those. And and I actually mentioned on the episode for New Year's, I mentioned that I mentioned that I have goals. I just don't want to say I don't want to put them out to the universe via podcast, because I'm trying to work on them. I'm trying to keep them contained, because I feel like whenever I put them out to the universe says, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Well, let me just work on them without fucking just telling the world, right?"
Yeah,
So
without
I've
the
been
criticism.
right. But then I recently, I guess maybe the past few weeks, even with what I said on that podcast episode, I did reach where it's like, wow, I've kind of been doing that, where it's like, I just like, okay, I'm kind of done with this part. Okay, I'm going to the next thing. And I've been doing that, since I left high, since for the past 10 years, I technically, in my evaluation, I feel like that's what it's been, is like, oh, okay, I'm going to move on to my next adventure. And it's like, so now, because it's like, well, I do want a family. I do want these other things, but it's like, well, I'm also like 1,600 miles away from home, and I'm over here, and then Corona like threw a wrench in like just the social life and all that stuff. So it's like it's just different, and then me working in the healthcare field, it's like I'm more conscious of like health and like I was already on that track, so like where I'm at, I feel like makes a lot more sense, even now. It just solidifies like my care for just well-being and over mental and physical well-being. But I do think about like, well, because the way things work now, it's like I do have to kind of think about my future, because it affects like what I'm choosing and where I'm going to go next. So it's like, and so while there's options now to take off the work part, the career part, and go back to like my personal life, it's like, well, when am I going to stop? Because I've kind of been on the go and I've been on the run. It's like that's just what I do. Like even like I was actually just thinking about it. Because technically, what are we, 2020, 2019? So what, 2019, when we, 2 years ago already, that we were getting ready to go to New York, and we had that cool 3-day adventure.
Yeah.
Like,
oh man. And I think back, and I'm like, man, like at certain like mile markers, in time, I'm just like, oh darn, it's been like a year from this, and it's been 2 years from that, and then, dude, soon enough, I'm like, damn, it's been like now, like 10 years since high school.
When I bring up in my workplace that I graduated college in 2015, these people cannot believe it.
Yeah, I was just thinking that the other day. I was like, man, I graduated college when? It's like
May 24th. Yeah, you guys,
college,
all
you
y'all
mind
graduate.
you,
Yeah,
like
exactly. And that's what makes me feel. That's what I don't feel it. That's what makes me sound like I'm 40. Because
yeah,
with the people that I work with, for the most part, they don't have degrees. They're working on degrees, so they're working on it, or they don't have one yet. Period. They don't have one yet, and the majority
hmm
are working on to getting one, right. And
yeah,
and it's like, oh yeah, back in 2013 when I was working, here, and I was doing taking this class. So like, and I was in high school, and I was a freshman in high, like stuff like that. It's like, oh my god,
yeah,
it's not even depressing. It's for me, it's hilarious. For them, they just see me as old, and by now I've bit the bull. Like it actually it doesn't offend. I tell them too. I'm like, it doesn't offend me. I don't mind being the butt of a joke. Humor is good.
yeah.
Like I tell you
And
what,
it is
laugh
what
a
it
lot
is. Like
more.
that's just
Right, and it's like, what do you want me
yeah.
to do? This is where I'm at.
You can't
I'm
change
like,
it. Yeah,
everything
that's
you've
just how
done
it
in your
is.
everything you've done in your 18 years of life, everything you've done in your 25 years of life, everything in my 29 years of life, we're all still here, and this is what it is.
Yeah. And somewhere, someday, they might be the butt of a similar joke
Yeah,
down the line, in their life.
right.
So
Yeah, because
even if it ends up being when they have kids.
right, yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
So,
It's a different world that I'm in, and I'm
mhm.
just trying to be a piece of the puzzle. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to stick out like the way. uh I don't know. I've also told them this, like, when I was first getting ready to join and leave, and I had an idea of what I thought my work was going to be, and now being in the work and starting to not see how things really are, but just how human things can be in a hierarchy, and there's a perception that it's like when I talk to my parents or like different things, and it's a lot, and some stuff that I don't want to mention on because this is a public, it's a very public platform and whatnot, and I don't want to be private
Yeah.
about the publishing of this podcast. But it's just the general aspect of like hierarchies, and that's why I like that it's still raised. That's why Jocko's models work, because he's been able to get in his brain, design this thing. It's like, oh yeah, this is actually the same thing as a business, and that's what I like about it. But the point is, like, um, how can I say this? Ugh, I haven't done this in a while. Fuck. Um, I'm trying to think of like, because then I think about like ever evolving model, and then there's all this meta. Never mind, I'm just gonna we're gonna like stop that point there because then we can because we've done this before. We get like just so meta in conversation where it's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, look at the stars,
Yeah.
they're like fucking forever away. Like, we get into like that.
Yeah.
We've gotten that
What is
conversation
life?
before. Well,
We get
yeah, exactly. We get into
existential
this
and
meta thing where it's like,
yeah.
oh yeah, we've done this before.
Yeah, and in this conversation that I mentioned earlier about like moving away for a while and clean slate adventure blah blah
Yeah.
blah, it almost got like that. It almost got existential. And I was like, wait, like that's
Whoa,
not the
whoa, whoa.
point. The point is go scratch an itch now
Yeah.
versus start accumulating something and then scratch that itch later, which
Right.
like I mentioned, a lot of like 40-year-olds are doing now, like they're kind of like living their best life,
Right.
so to speak, now.
Right.
So yeah, man, it's all about
It's pretty cool
perspective
though,
too.
because like even those, like, let's say the 40-year-olds that are living their best life. It's like even I'll argue that even mathematically, the building of wealth, and especially if they had, let's just say they had a rough 20s because of whatever the situation was, but like they're 40
Hmm.
now, they're doing pretty good, they're living their best life, whatever that may be, whether it's like living on wheels or actually having a career that they like, and they're looking to just do it till they, or creating a business that's successful.
Hmm.
um it also kind of makes sense mathematically. Like you're 40 now, like you've lived 39 years,
Hmm.
and maybe your 20s were a little rough. You got your act together, and you're even you wait to your 30s to get your act together, but now in your 40s, like, oh, like I have some money in my pocket and I can do things now. It's like even
Yeah.
mathematically, I feel like statistically and mathematically, like it's definitely a goal that should, and I guess in my opinion, that it's okay to have. But then like for these people that are in their 40s and even 50s, because like Joe Rogan, dude, he's like 50, 53, 54. Like he's just over 50, I think. I don't. I'm not gonna look it up. People can look it up if they want.
Mhm.
But the point is, like, it's interesting. Like people like him that are like, super successful now with his Spotify like contract and all that stuff. It's pretty cool. But like, it's like, oh yeah, well they've also lived for 50 years. You know, like they just
Yeah.
with hard work, maybe they deserve a little bit of like cushion. You know.
Yeah. And you say it mathematically makes sense, but I feel like the reality isn't so clear or so strict to the rule. You know what I mean? Like, because I feel like there are a lot of people in their 40s, 50s, even 60s who kind of don't get to that point, even respective to their situation. So it just depends, it's life, I guess.
Right. And I also mentioned this on the New Year's Day podcast, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. It was that week of that podcast, and I mentioned, like my last point of that episode was, I literally at this moment for the past few years is like my biggest fear is just literally regret itself, no more, no less than having a single regret when I turn 40 to say fuck, because I already have those now. Like, yeah, sometimes I sleep too much, or sometimes like I fucking eat too much too. Like that happens, I didn't run today. It's like, oh damn it, like But I also like I try to balance that out. But the point is like just the regret of things itself, just everything that's happened. And then like the person, I texted you the other day, of what happened, with my family and stuff, back home, and like I'm not gonna go home, for a little while, and like and that brought even like for me, it just like. It brought me more to that. It pulled me more to like just the thought of like, yeah, like how could I want to live with regrets that are important to me? Like, yes, there's some stuff like let go.
Yeah, like you're mentioning now, like about eating too much or eating junk food or sleeping in or whatever, not exercising. I feel like those things are very minor in like the grand scheme of things, because you have the regrets that are like, something you didn't do today. But what you don't want to regret is something that's going to really like impact your life, your mental well-being, your emotional, your financial well-being. Like, I feel like those are the ones that we should avoid. And sure, if you want to like avoid like the smaller things, you can. But I feel like those are definitely not as bad as getting to your 60s and regretting, something that's really affecting you then, that's really like messing you up or messing with your head.
Yeah, like
something that's constantly bothering you.
And that's when we can bring in like back to what you had said, like scratching if you have an itch to do something, you should probably go do it and at least scratch it a little bit to see if it does anything. If not, then you just let it go. And that's where I would definitely tie in, the scratch your own itch, don't have regrets. But it's like, because there's little things that you should do every day, because you should eat decent every day. You should go for a walk, go outside for it. That's my thing now, is because even when I'm on shift, like I'm inside for 12 hours and then I sleep, especially if I have days in a row where I'm working. So my goal at the moment, like one of my goals is like, okay, get outside for an hour. Doesn't matter what I do. Just go stand in the sun. Literally, like, don't put sunscreen on purpose, because I'm outside, dude. And even my dad made the comment. My dad made the comment. He's like, "Hey, you look a little white there. You're a little pale." I'm like, yeah, thanks. I'm like, I don't think so. I'm like, I think it's just the phone, but I mean, whatever. But it was all in a joke. But like, I'm just tying it into like, where it's like, it's one of my goals, because I am inside so much, and that's just the thing. That's like, okay, I need to get fresh air. Like the funniest thing this is solely opinion, but the funniest thing to me is when I see people working out by themselves with decent space and having a mask on outside. If you're inside, have a mask on. If you're there's certain things, I've mentioned I got the vaccine. I'm getting my second vaccine within the next couple weeks. So like my circumstance is different, but even with that, even if it were 100% effective, I would still carry a mask with me, because there's still germs at the moment. There's still things out there. And it's funny, I've actually had the conversation with back home, because it's like, we never wore masks before, and it was like we were in airports and we're slammed together in malls, and all these things that we were doing and whatnot. And it's like, man, like Now it's not that I couldn't imagine a world without a mask again, but like I'm gonna have my mask with me for a little while,
And
even if there's nothing going on anymore. Like
yeah,
even if there's
and
no
this is something I wondered.
pandemic.
Something I wondered, during all of this is like, is this gonna create a generation or maybe even just a sector of people that grow up the rest of their lives being a little more germophobic, like being more conscious of your personal space and you're breathing the same air, so to speak, as like the person next to you.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's true, like I sometimes I find myself like at the grocery store and I'm like, whoa, that person's a little too close. Or or that person's touching all the avocados, like like
I try. Okay. Am I sure? Am I gonna take that? Because I'm only gonna touch one, and I don't. And also, I don't want because I think about. I don't want to infect the next person.
yeah.
I do think about. I literally like. I'm touching something, and it's like, shit. Do I want like? I already touched it. Yes, I already touched it. It's like, damn it.
Yeah.
And there's been a couple times where like, oh damn, I actually don't want it, and I take it anyways because I don't want anybody else to touch it. Like. That's just me, that's just me of trying to be a little selfless, in my acts out in public. Cause the person next to me doesn't know that I work, in a hospital and I'm in healthcare and I deal with sick people. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. True.
It's like,
true.
And I think about that and like people, I feel like there's more consciousness, but it's like, I've also seen the opposite where people don't give a fuck. Even when this first started, I was in an airport in Atlanta, and the good thing is I don't know the guy's name. I don't know anything about him. I just know it was a guy, and he left the restroom right after. Like, we were both washing so I was washing my hands. That's what happened. I think I was washing my hands, and I saw this guy walk out after using the restroom. Didn't wash his hands. I'm like, bro, like, and this was the beginning, so we didn't really know much, and this person was a little older, so maybe he didn't know yet. I don't know, like. It had already been a couple of weeks that we had been hearing about it, and then all these plans changed for my travel. But I'll never forget. If I saw him again, I probably won't recognize him. But it's just a matter of fact of like I saw this guy at the beginning of the pandemic, still in an airport. Yes, things were shutting down. There's a lot less people, a lot less travel by this time. But I was in the Atlanta airport. I was washing my hands, and this guy did not. He just skipped. Just jump shit. It's like, oh my god! Like,
goes and touches doors and seats and stuff.
I'm like, I hope he's not getting on my airplane. Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, man. So that's what I'm thinking too. Like, are we gonna be a little more germ conscious moving forward, or the mask thing? Are we gonna keep wearing masks? Because one thing I was talking to a friend. She lived in China for a while, and she was like, the whole mask thing wasn't weird for me because in China everybody wears masks or has been wearing masks before that.
Because
I think over there it's mainly because of the pollution, the air pollution,
and there's also different, just air. Yeah, I guess air conditions is just different.
General,
because I've heard of that. Definitely in Asia in general, like not just China, but in different Asian areas as well.
Yeah. So it makes me wonder, like. Is this to an extent, a new normal, or are some people gonna just normalize this into their own, lifestyle, to their own day-to-day routine?
Right.
It's interesting what this might, or the effect that this might have. Because someone else was saying, and again, this might be just an opinion, but somewhere I heard, either I was watching a video or it was an in-person conversation. I heard somebody say, it was an older person. They were like, "This is worse than the war," and I was like, "Huh." I didn't know in what aspect but some people
you could have had a follow-up
are
question.
taking it very hard. I guess is the I guess the message in that statement.
Right. Yeah.
Some people are taking it very, very seriously or very hard, or it's interesting.
Especially because that's where it starts getting personal. Like, because if you think of night, go ahead. Were you saying something beyond yes?
I mean, I have a thought in mind because it happened recently.
Okay, go ahead. Or if you want to say it.
So it was a mutual friend of ours,
Okay.
me and you.
Yep.
Him and I were standing next to the brother of another friend,
Okay.
another mutual friend of him and I.
Okay.
So it was the three of us, and the brother of our friend goes, I want to say that this was the worst year ever, like the worst year of our lives. And
It's a
then
big statement.
our mutual friend goes, I don't think it wasn't that bad. And I was like, whoa. I was like, first of all,
Continue.
these two people have had a very, very different years though. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, so for
Yeah.
one person, I feel like he was totally, of course, in his own right to make that statement, because at the end of the day, it's kind of an opinion to a certain extent. Sorry, extent,
Okay.
because it we can only kind of judge the year by from our personal perspective.
Yeah.
So because that guy is the brother of one of our friends, him and I are our friend know that in the last 2 months, like he's had like three relatives pass away,
Mm.
and that
Was it due to
day,
COVID or was it like underlying conditions that led to COVID?
y-
That then COVID like
I
kind
think
of
I
like
think
affected that
I
most.
mean, at the end of the day, COVID was like the last straw.
Okay.
Whether it was entirely COVID or
Yeah.
whether it was complications,
It ended
um,
with COVID being
yeah, it ended with COVID. So, and this person knew that. So when he said, it wasn't that bad, I was like, dude, sure, it wasn't that bad for you, but that
right.
was so insensitive to just blurt out that
Yeah.
statement after this statement,
Yeah.
especially
Big,
when we knew of his circumstances,
yeah. Yeah. He
because
had
of course
lost.
he's the brother of the person that told us, same family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when he said that, I was like, oh, ouch. So
Yeah.
I
Bad
immediately did
bad
jump in and I
timing
was
and
like, well, you know what? It's perspective. He could have had a bad year. You could have had a not so bad year. So that's why you made that
that's
statement.
yeah. Yeah.
But all in all, I feel like we should always be a little bit more considerate, before we just say things, because I mean, it, we don't have to have malintent behind our states, but they can sound insensitive if you don't think about it.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So yeah,
Rough.
back to the perspective thing. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that person was comparing it to a war that they lived through. They're like, this is worse than the war. You know what? For them, it might have been. For them, the
Yeah.
war might have been a not so bad time,
Yeah.
and for them, this last year, 2020, could have been a really bad year.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes.
Yeah. 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 Because I mean, three's a lot. I mean, three's a
So,
lot. Three's a lot, especially
and that was just the last couple of months. I feel like they had one or two other relatives pass away earlier in the year. And those are maybe not COVID related, but still, let's say five family members passing away in 2020,
in a year.
whether COVID or not, like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's a
It's a
lot to
lot.
take in 1 year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a lot. Yeah, I think
yeah,
the most I've had in a single year is maybe two, maybe. Definitely one per year, like lately. This past like since 2011.
yeah,
But not in 1 year. Yeah, that's a big it's a big punch in the
yeah,
face.
yeah, man. And I don't know, stuff like that. Like, when I don't know if you and I have talked about this like on the podcast, but definitely, like, I'll confess that when I was little, when I was like elementary, like third grade ish, sometimes I would cry, bro. I don't know where I would cry because I would think to myself, one day I'm gonna die, and I don't want to die. Like, and those are
Do you
some
remember when
kind
that
of dark
was?
thoughts to have at
You,
third grade. It was like
third
third,
grade?
fourth grade, bro. Yeah.
Dude, I remember, okay, this is a very specific memory, and I don't even have to say all of it, but it's very related. When the movie Ice Age came out,
Okay.
I don't know why, but the matter of fact that there's an Ice Age, I think that then with the internet being new and like all this information like being little, I was
Hmm.
like, I don't want to die of the cold. like that was one of my first morbid thought, like a sincerely morbid thought that now it's just it's just a memory that like I said, it's very, I still remember it. And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen. Like, I don't want, and it was just the whole thought, that initial thought of, death and whatnot. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So I remember like some nights I would like just cry at night thinking like, damn, I like living. Like I don't want to die. And so now, especially like, as an adult and then like going into stoicism and whatnot, like you just come to learn, at least me, I've come to learn that death is just, it's a part of life.
Yeah.
Even though it's the end, it's just kind of a part of it, like, it happens for everybody sooner or later.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for some, it's sooner rather than later, but it happens.
Right.
So like, and of course, because it wasn't my family members, I'm still talking about this friend, right?
Yeah.
When he would tell us like, hey, this person passed away, it's like, you give your condolences, and it obviously doesn't affect me emotionally like it affects them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's I guess what I'm trying to get at is that it doesn't affect me, but I still kind of have, or try to have, the sensibility to like, give my condolences and not make insensitive comments, I guess, because that other statement from that other friend, it honestly, like, to me, it was like a not I don't want to call it a slap in the face. It was like a blast of
it was just
insensitivity, I
much.
guess.
Yeah,
If
it
you
was
can
just
imagine that.
it was just a
Like,
very
whoa,
straightforward
dude, like,
it was a very straightforward sentence without being thought through before saying it.
yes. So
Or even
yeah, so
considering who he's saying this in front of, it's like there was no thought of that.
exactly.
There was no tie in that little
Yeah.
network of thoughts.
Yes. And I guess another thought that I had earlier in the conversation, we were talking about like leadership and the humanity and this and that. Like, one thing that I always try to keep in mind is like, do not forget like that we are all human. We have emotions. Like, and there are bigger things outside of whatever bubble you're in. Because when I used to work at the bank, like, a lot of things were always like, do this now. This has to be done this way now. We have a deadline and blah 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 blah. And at a certain point, like early on, I was like, yeah, I know, and I wouldn't take lunch, and I leave really late, things like that. And it's like, whoa, I was like, the world's not gonna end because this comma is out of place. Like, and I don't mean to take it as in like, fuck grammar, fuck all the commas, don't dot your eyes, don't. No, I don't mean it like,
Don't
just
cross your
throw it
T's.
all out the window.
Leave it alone.
Yeah, don't throw it all out the window. I'm just saying, like, don't be overcritical about the very, 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 like, minuscule, I guess.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, you're just gonna end up eating yourself up or beating yourself up, and you're not
burning
gonna,
out.
Yeah, and you're gonna end up burning out, and for something that's not even actually like that important, that doesn't really matter, that doesn't, and then like a year or 2 years down the road, you're gonna leave that job, and then you're gonna realize, hopefully you end up at a better place for your own sake.
Yeah.
But you might
that, or like, or
going through that
you're
for
gonna
nothing.
move on to the next project. Even smaller timeline. You're gonna move on to the next project. There's gonna be more project
Yes,
after that
and
one.
then yeah, and so when I came to that realization, I I stopped worrying so much, and dude, everything was just flowing so much better after
Which is
that. Like,
different,
after
yeah.
you kind of like flip that switch,
Mhm.
and it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
wait a
When
minute. I was like,
do you feel like that was the
did this
first
building
time
burn down?
yeah. Do you feel like that was the first time that switch flipped? Do you think like there like that was like not maybe that, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't matter if you remember the particular project or what it was, but just the situation of, let's
I,
just for the sake of continuing with the example of missing a comma, was that what one of the first times that you were like, oh, like I can, some things
I
can wait
feel
till tomorrow and some things need to get done today.
I feel like for my time at working there, working at that bank,
Yep.
it was the first time. And I feel like that switch might have been flipped in the past with more like minuscule scenarios.
Yeah.
But that was like the bigger picture where I was like, if I go take a 30-minute lunch, it's not going to like kill
You can
anybody.
eat. You can take 30 minutes and take
Yeah,
the
like
full 30
I
minutes.
can take. Yeah, mind you, my lunch times were hour lunch times. Like I was supposed to
You're
take
yeah.
an
You
hour
mentioned
lunch.
that. Yeah,
So
I
even
remember,
if I
bro.
go across the street and grab a quick bite for 30
Yep.
minutes and
And
come
that's because you
back,
have
like
like decent like
that's not.
you have stuff that's close by, so it's not like you're gonna go
Oh
so
yeah,
far that you're gonna
definitely.
be late even after an hour. An hour. An hour or past your hour of lunch break.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, and so so one very kind of like comparison there is recently, because now I do, this, I do contract work for
Yep.
that same bank.
At Xcelligence, look it up. Instagram.
So yeah.
Email him. He'll
Yeah,
do all
thanks
your
for the
work for
plug.
you. Anyways, continue.
Yeah. Um so then so okay. I don't know if I've updated you on this part, but that bank has hired a new budget manager.
Interesting.
He's only like a year or less older than me. Very young dude. Very young dude.
Right, young,
Very
relatively speaking,
30.
compared to.
Very smart. I
Yeah.
I don't want to get into him too
Yeah. Yeah.
much, but he's very smart because he came outside of banking and has picked up all of this banking knowledge and all of the branches and different aspects of banking,
Hmm.
and no less put all that into a budget perspective.
Yeah.
Like he picked it up very well.
That's good.
So there was one day that was before like a big budget presentation. I think it was the day before. He decided not to take a lunch. He was, I guess, so I don't want to say that he was too like worried,
Yeah.
but I guess he
It
just
was
wanted to
bother
get.
something was bothering him, or he wanted to get it done, or.
I want to say that he just didn't want to miss a beat. He wanted to be at the office, every second of the day to make sure that everything was
It's
was
perfect.
was yeah, that it was rolling along as it should, because this budget season he was pretty much at the head of the train.
That's good.
He was the one driving it. Yeah, so I'm very impressed with that. But that one day he just didn't take a lunch, and I took a 30-minute lunch. And then in the evening while we were working, we ended up not working as late. And you know what? No, maybe we did. Let's say we left that day a couple minutes shy of 10 p.m. And so previous years, if we're gonna stay that late, we usually order dinner, or our superior orders dinner. And so that's kind of what happened, or that was mentioned by another coworker. He was like, "Oh yeah, hopefully they order dinner for us because it seems like we're gonna stay late." Well, I guess this guy was counting, the new budget manager was counting on maybe getting dinner at like 6 7 p.m. So he didn't take a lunch, and nobody ordered dinner, and so he was starving by
Yeah.
like 10
So that's
p.m. And I think when he got home, he also commutes about an hour every day to and from, an
yeah.
hour,
I
two
hear about
hours
that
round
now. Yeah.
trip.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah, so by the
bad.
time he got home that night, it was very late. He might have had a light snack, went to bed, and then in the morning, I don't think he had breakfast. So the next day, he was starving, and he goes, "I learned my lesson. I'm gonna go take a lunch."
Good. Hey,
and
that's
and
cool. He turned it
so
on his own too. Good. That switch flipped.
yeah, so so I'm hoping that that switch, it wasn't just for the event of taking a lunch break. I hope that it flipped it in the bigger spectrum, like we were talking,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sometimes not doing a certain thing isn't gonna end the world.
Yeah.
It's not gonna burn the building
Or
down. Like it's
sometimes like
okay.
right. Or sometimes, hey, taking that 15 to 30 minute break, you actually need a reset. Like your brain, you it's actually also healthy, like to
Yes.
take that 30 minute,
Yeah.
like, hey, let me just get out of here for 30
Yes.
minutes
And
and
I take that into consideration when I'm like stumped on something.
Mhm.
Um, when I'm stumped on something, like if it's around lunchtime, you know what? I'm just gonna take a lunch, and
Yeah,
when I look at it again when I come back, it might make sense.
a little bit more
If
fresh.
I can't figure something out, or whatever,
Yeah,
it's a good little, that little break might just reset your perspective, your energy level. Like
yeah,
so yeah,
yeah.
it
My
was
my favorite thing currently is getting fresh eyes. So like I'm new, but I'm starting to
Mm.
lean into that side. I'm starting to lean into that part where I'm not new anymore. And I learned there's some things, some math things that there's well math, but like clerk administrative things that I didn't necessarily need to learn, but I learned them because like it, regardless, it's like this might be good that that people that the people that I work with on my shift know that I know how to do it. Fine, I don't need to do it all the time or every day or every shift, but like, hey, if Acosta can do it, hey, I know he can do it,
Yeah.
whatever. But in working with younger people, that's one of my favorite things to do because there was something. And now in this situation, I love that it was like it was organically. I was getting my numbers. My numbers weren't correct. I was doing. I did it over and over. I wrote the number next to like what I was looking at, what I was trying to chart, and I was like, man, this is not right. And I told my guys, I'm like, hey, man, look at this. Like, he's been in a little bit longer than me. He has a little more experience there, just in general. So it's like, hey, I'm missing something. I don't know what, and I can't see it anymore. I've been looking at this paper for like at this point I've been like 2 hours like looking at the same, and it's not even the count, like the number wasn't even over like 100. It was just organizing like 100 numbers, like 100, not 100 numbers, but like 0 to 100. It was just accounting where they belong, where everybody belongs, right?
Okay.
And yeah, I was like, it was like 2 hours in. They're like, you're not done yet. I'm like, I literally don't know what I'm missing. And then at that point was like, hey, look at this thing. Our circumstances is different when it comes to like breaks and stuff like that. So it was more like, hey, I need you to come over here and just look at this for me. Like, I just look at it. And then it still took like another 30 minutes, but then finally we found like the error in it. And then we turned it in. It was fine. Like, everything was fine. But that is one of my favorite things to do now because that's where it's like, hopefully in me doing this, it'll like start priming the future, whether they stay in, whether they go out and create their own businesses, whatever they end up doing after is like, if they can prime them, like, hey, like being able to ask for help, stuff like that. And in this case, the help is like, actually, if you're able to, take your break, go take a walk. Maybe you're not hungry, go take a walk. Like you should probably, that's why I try to get outside for an hour, when I'm not working. Cause like, if that's what I got, that's what I got.
Yeah. The other thing I used to do, because I definitely do that now, like I kind of spitball ideas or,
Yeah.
The way another friend called it, he called me and he had all this data, and he was like, hey, how can I do, like, what can I do to get this result or to work with it to get this result? And so I ended up telling him, you got to reorganize the data, like do it this way, and this will facilitate,
When you make a table
the formula, I guess. Yeah. So he looked at it and the way he called it, he was like, thanks for being my thought partner. And I was like, nice. Like I hadn't heard that term before.
Yeah,
it was nice.
That's a new one.
And then the other thing I'll do is even if like I don't have the data in front of me, I'll go and talk to somebody, because a long time ago when I first started working at the bank, I was my manager at the time. I talked to him about this problem that I was having, and as I was telling him, I figured out the answer in that moment, and I was like, you know what, man, like I got it, thanks. And like I walked out. He's like, yeah, sometimes you just gotta talk it out.
Yeah. That's a big one.
I guess sometimes saying things out loud or maybe
There's
you reorganize your
so we mentioned like several things. So there's reorganizing, taking a walk, taking your lunch break. If you're allowed a break, take it.
Yeah.
Even if it's 30, maybe you couldn't have 30 minutes, take the break. So take the break, reorganizing, saying it out loud. Like these are all like little things where it's like they're, especially because I see it firsthand now where some of our younger adults, they get frustrated over things that is, I'll say it's in their control. The work just needs to get done. It's just doing the work. They don't want to do the work. And it's like, hold on. And then whatever the problem is, and we talk about it out loud. And some of it's like, because even some of my coworkers and stuff, I'm helping them like with their FAFSA stuff. Like it's called, like this is probably my favorite part. Aside from patient care, one of my favorite parts at the moment is like helping them, either help them with like some type of college or like, oh, I'm trying to do this outside of work. It's like that's probably one of my favorite things. And then when I see him get frustrated, I'm like, hold on, well, let's just take a step back. Like, what are you trying to say? And then when I say, I'm like, oh, and then there's been the reaction too, where it's like, where I ask him, hey, what are you trying to say? Well, this isn't like, and then for them it clicks, and like, oh, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm okay. Thank not, they don't even give me thank yous, like, but I don't get mad about it. But it's just a funny. I'm like,
Yeah.
man. But anyways, the point is the premise, because that is the most important thing to me, because like for these young adults that are 5 to 10 years younger than us, it's like they're coming up now. It's like, yeah, we should probably help facilitate their upbringing, because they're going to work for us, they're going to work with us, there's going to be different things that because I'm right now, that's my example. Is like they're co-workers. I'm no higher nor lower than them in certain aspects, other than time that we've been in or whatever. But even then, whenever something comes up and like, hey, Costa, do you know about this? I'm like, yeah, I do, because I've already done that. Like I've already, because my most recent things are like the SWOT thing, the SWOT analysis, FAFSA, college in general, trying to figure out, different, just
Life
different
in
life
general.
things. Yeah, different life things. And I'm like, I bet you guys don't even know how to write a check. That's one of my jokes, because they don't need to. So then
Yeah.
for the most part, right? For the most part, you don't need to write a check anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So now my adaptability is like trying to say, okay, well, what do you need help with? Because I do have like other experiences and stuff. Oh, recommendation letters. I felt kind of happy, and so actually I can say that because Gonzo's been on here like a while back, but he recently asked me to write him a recommendation letter, because from what I've seen, he's gonna start paramedic school pretty soon, which is that's really cool. So he's been working his way up through via experience through EMT and all that stuff. Now he's gonna go to paramedic school, and God willing, he'll be a paramedic. I don't know how long the program is, so we'll say a year to 2 years he'll be where he's supposed to be. Hopefully it'll be, it'll fulfill him, the way he's been through his experiences so far. It'll fulfill him even more, as it continues through his, journey. And we'll eventually talk to him and get him on and stuff like that too. But recommendation letters, and it's funny because he messaged me. He's like, "Hey, dude, like, would you mind writing me a recommendation?" Blah blah. I'm like, "Yeah, dude." He's like, "It doesn't mean there's no format." I'm like, I got you. Like, after he told me that, I'm like, okay, I got you. Like, there's no specific format. Like, I can kind of just do it on my own. He just needs one. I'm like, okay, cool, I got you. It's funny enough, because then one of my coworkers, they're like, hey, they didn't ask me how to write a recommendation letter, but like, hey, I'm asking this person, one of our leaders, to write him a recommendation. She was asking, or the leadership was asking, well, just give me a list of X, Y, and Z, and I'll write it based on that. And he's like, and then said coworker comes to me, and I'm like, dude, just my approach is always going to be give the most, and then reiterate, hey, I don't need you to mention everything on here. I'm giving you more than you need, so that if you find a flow with all this information, then you just use whatever you need. He's like, oh, okay, cool, like, thanks. And that was another little moment, but it's I don't know, these little things are like interesting to me, because it's like that's what gets me excited. And I don't know, I'm not trying to go really anywhere from this premise with this point, but it's like that I'm learning that even about myself, is like that's what I enjoy. I really enjoy getting people outside of their heads of like, oh, this is my career, or this is my job, or it's like, yes, it's very important, especially when literally people's lives are in our hands at various points, depending on how bad they come in, they present themselves, because it happens.
Yeah.
I mean, and now as I'm getting experience and I'm building up my shift time, it's like it happens, right? So but then they bring me this external stuff. It's like, yes, we'll knock it out, whatever it may be, we'll do it. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see. And then it excites me for them, because that means they're trying to better themselves outside of a singular thing, because and one thing I've been thinking about, because I had the conversation with somebody, because I have a family member. You have to have met, maybe this is a while back, but anyways, point is, he worked for UPS for 30 years, and the reason why I'm tying in that 30 years, because like that's what careers used to be, and like for us, it's not necessary. Maybe we find maybe we find like our the things that we like to work on. But like you went from a bank to now doing Xcelligence. It still involves a lot of concepts and a lot of stuff that you learned via banking, but now you've
Yeah.
made into your own thing. For me, like I'm still like picking up, these little gold nuggets where it's like, oh, like patient care. I like doing that. When my coworkers that are trying to better themselves, I like that too. Oh, recommendation there. Yeah, I'll do one for you. Like absolutely. And there's people that I won't do one for. There's also that. It's like, hey man, I'm like sorry, but like I'd be a reference for you, but I know you too well, and I just would not be the best person to do that. And it's only happened a couple of times, but it's happened. And I'm like, I'm just being honest with you. I'm like, because you know the truth about yourself. Now I'm willing to help you with things, but don't have them calling me, asking for my praise about you.
Yeah.
That's just the way I've worded it. I'm like,
Because you know what I know.
yeah, I'm like, because you know what I know, because either I was their leader at the time, or even before, what I'm in now. But like, there's just been different moments where it's like I can't rightfully do it. I'm like, I'm not the guy. I'm like, I'll help you with anything else, but I'm not the guy for a reference. Because, man, do you remember? You know this person. I don't want to say the name, but this was back when I was at Harbor Freight, and I got this person a job. Do you remember? Right? Yep. Okay. So that dude, that's one of my business things now, where it's like I have to be and I don't even care about I care about my name, yes, but it's not an egotistical thing or an arrogant thing, but it's like my name is important to me, to where it's like, if you're gonna ask me to be a reference or letter of recommendation, make sure you come with your ducks in a row, and like, because that's a whole, because I treat that a whole different way than I do when we're just friends and we're having some drinks, or we're having a barbecue, or we're hanging out pre-COVID, like shit like that.
Yeah.
Versus like, oh, on a professional level, it's like, hey, and I'm like, because then it comes to that, it's like, how I am on a professional level. I'm like, what I expect, what my standards are, and how I conduct things in general, and like, yeah. So those are just points that have led to like, hey, I can't rightfully be recommendation. Yeah. Or like sometimes I'll hear like things where it's like, oh, I didn't get this. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't have given it to you either, bro. Like, it's not time. And so my reinforcement is that it's just not time. That's one, at least for that one example. That I don't want to talk about it in depth, but there was an example kind of recent where I was like, yeah, it makes sense why it didn't. This thing didn't happen. It's not time yet. It's not time for you. You're still
hard for me. It's still hard for me to tell somebody like what you said. Where you internally, I guess, say like, yeah, I wouldn't have given you. Like, I didn't get this position. Yeah, I wouldn't have hired you either. Right. It's hard for me to say that, because I've heard of a specific person that's just kind of like applying to all these different jobs. And in my mind, these jobs are kind of, it's not like a complete switch of like the industry, but it's different enough where you kind of need other prerequisites, other experience. And so when they tell me like, oh, I applied here, and nobody called me, I'm just like, I don't know how to tell them, yeah, man, it's because you just don't have the qualifications, to be honest. Yep. And I feel like they know that they don't have the qualifications. They're just kind of like, it's one of those spray and pray. They're just applying everywhere.
They're spitballing on a dart. Yeah, they're throwing darts and trying to hit something. Yeah.
I haven't gotten. I don't know how. I don't have the heart to tell them like, man, you're just shooting at nothing.
Right, and see, and that's why I try to do it softly. Like, I'm like, it's just not time, man. It's not time. It's not time for this thing to happen.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to put it, because
it's taking me a little bit. Don't, and for those, for everybody listening, like, don't take it as like, oh, like that. It sounds like a so smart. Like, yeah, it took me a little bit. Like, I'm not, like,
you're so wise.
Yeah. No, it takes a while to get there, because like, and I'll talk about this individually on the podcast, and I'll bring it up later. But there's stuff that happened in high school. And I don't know if I've mentioned before, but there's stuff that I want to bring up later on. But just little things where it's like, damn, I was an asshole. And it's funny because people that meet me now, They're like, no, like you're a cause, you're this. And I'm like, you don't know, like, and I'm not saying that I intentionally. And see, the thing is, I didn't intentionally do it then, but looking at it, I'm like, damn, like I could have taken and I could have done better. You know, I could have that 1% better that we've talked about and we talk about. It's like I could have done that. I could have tried a little better to be a better person.
I've had if not the exact, the very similar thought recently. So I was already having this thought before, and then on New Year's Eve, I was having a conversation with two friends, one who I met in college, late college, and one who I've known since mid high school.
Okay.
And so they were kind of talking about me, like, I guess almost like first impressions. And so the one that I know from high school was like, man, you were preppy and you were an asshole and you thought you were all of that. And I was like, whoa. I was like, oh, and the other guy, he was like, man, I thought you were like white and you came from like a rich family and this and that. But never that I was a jerk.
Yeah, never that
he thought I was like
your
a nice
characteristics
guy,
were bad, but
yeah, that I had a completely different background, but he never said that I was, I was mean or anything like that.
yeah.
And so one thing that clicked or that, came to my own mind was like, I never considered myself to be like better than anybody, but I will admit that I was kind of a jerk. I was an asshole to like certain people. Yeah. But I will say, like, sometimes it wasn't even with like a good reason. It wasn't that like these people were being mean to me and I was being mean back. Sometimes I was just, I hate to say this out loud, but sometimes it felt like I was just kind of a little bit of a bully.
That's I've come to the same conclusion. Different things.
Like,
damn it. Now because bullying. Okay, I will argue that bullying is real. Like there's a line there, but maybe it stems from that. The fact like no, like it stemmed. It's borderline, if not crossing that line into bullying, which is not. It's not good. It's not good.
Yeah,
you're messing around. You're joking at each other. You're coking and joking with each other. It's one thing, but when you're pushing.
Yeah,
and
I feel like it wasn't that clear back then. Also because maybe it wasn't so out there. So there wasn't all of this like awareness or acknowledgement of it back then as there is today. Back then it wasn't like bully was a big topic. Like everybody did it, everyone picked on each other, I guess. Yeah, but yeah, so when you started talking about this, I was like, man, like first of all, I already had this thought, in recent times.
Right.
New Year's Eve when we were talking about it, this person was like, yeah, you were kind of an asshole. I was like, you know what? I know that I was, but it wasn't my intention to be like,
right. Yeah. That's probably my biggest
to be
thing.
a jerk,
intent,
to be
like malintent.
At the same nail.
Malintent. Like it wasn't malintent.
It was probably just
I got that from somebody, something
funny or like I don't know, but
also I think it has to do with like kind of. I'll say it. Maybe it has something to do also with like kind of our upbringing, like just our roots, our home roots. Because like back home, like my uncles and shit, like they were like hardcore, like as far as like verbally, like I'm not gonna say abusive, but just verbally like pressing, like but that's the way it was, but that was normal. So for us, it was like
not out there
like
bad. Telling poems to each other, like
exactly, exactly. And then and even in the empathy is like, because I've actually told this message. I've told you the story, but like my grandpa gave me and my cousin, what cousin I'm talking about, he gave us $1, and that's where I learned my value of $1. Have I told you that story?
It sounds familiar.
And I lost that $1, but I still learned. Like my grandpa said, hey, you don't need it, because my cousin wasn't. I just don't want to mention his name, because he was the one who was saying, he's like, hey, I want to get paid for like helping, and my grandpa was like, hey, you don't need money to help your own. Like he gave us $1, and I ended up losing $1, and that there was my there was my fate anyways. Like it's like because it it was I learned more than that $1 was gonna give me, right?
Yeah.
But fuck, how was I gonna tie us into what were we leading into?
Oh, you're talking about bullying and
Yeah,
but it was part of the upbringing.
yeah.
You
So
know?
upbringing. So like there's that, but then like so when we go with our uncles, so his dad and then my other uncle, and it was four of us. Like we weren't like just saying exactly going back saying poems and like like no, like it was my uncles and it was me and my cousins, and we're just BSing while we're loading this truck full of produce to take back to these cows, and we're out there freaking 11 o'clock in the morning in South Texas, and it's freaking 100 degrees already. Like like that's what we're doing. Like it's our best time. Like Jesus, we're 10 years old. Like
Yeah.
But the whole bullying and like thing, like it got pretty dicey sometimes.
Yeah,
It wasn't
and also
intentional, it
like
got pretty dicey.
at least for me, I know at certain points, I never considered that I was bullied, but at certain points of like elementary school, maybe even middle school, there were points of like getting picked on.
Like it
So
could
at some point, at some point, it was just like, you know what, like not that it was so straightforward as thinking now it's my turn, but it was kind of like, hey, now I'm not being picked on, but like maybe the attention is on someone else.
And then also like the fact of like
the
fact of like when we're now that we're like what's the word, like we're like combined now with like different age groups. So like let's just say we're juniors and we have a speech class or something with freshmen, like different interminglings of like ages. So now there's people that are younger than us, so now it's like, oh, this is opportunity because we have this like we have this opportunity, we have the opportunity now because we're in the same class, and like, oh, don't think you're hot shit because you're younger than me, like don't forget that, like stuff like that.
Or sometimes it's like fear. Sometimes maybe it's the fear of getting picked on by someone that's younger, and then you look bad in front of everybody, and it's like, well, I can't let that happen,
Right.
Like it's
no, that's a good one. That's a good
more in line for like the younger person to get ragged on rather than the older person.
Right. Yeah. And now it's like I don't give a shit. Like you can say whatever you want because half the stuff you say doesn't. Third person in general, like it's like half the stuff you guys say, it's like it doesn't bother me.
Yeah,
it doesn't, because it actually doesn't matter.
Brushes off.
Yeah, it's like, oh. And then because I fall into that extreme too, because they're like, oh, you don't have much like in the workplace, like, oh, you don't like, well, I'm at work, like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm trying to do my job, like, I'm like, like it's just funny because it's just the points of views that come in because there's such a wide age range of like people, trying to accomplish the same goals, but having different backgrounds, having, different points of views on even humor, stuff like that. It's super, super cool. Ooh, that's pretty good. That was a good run. that was a pretty good run. We're almost reaching, we're almost at 2 hours. Almost. Not quite.
Good deal.
It's good shit. Well, fuck. I think we can end the podcast here. I think. At the moment, I feel like that was a pretty good run. I don't want to burn it out. But then, like, we've had those previous podcasts where I stop it and then we continue chatting, like when we're back at the house, and we go for another freaking 2 hours. I'm like, damn, we should recorded this too.
And you know what? A part of me was hoping to like get these conversations. Not these specifically for a podcast, but those interesting conversations with some beers and stuff when you're down here.
Yeah.
But then it's like, also if we get that chance, like we're probably never gonna finish. And
right.
That's fine. But
even like Freddie,
I can't tell if we have a lot to talk about or
right.
It's all just hype.
Like Freddie was saying the other day on text, he was like front porch sessions, like music and stuff, like, dude, like you guys, like, it's like, I think you guys do know, but like, I just want to say, I guess I just want to present as well, like the fact that like, I can't wait. I mean, it's going to be a little while, and even then, like when I get there is when I'll be satisfied. Does that make sense? Like when I get there, like when my feet are on the ground, like back in Texas, like I'll be completely satisfied. Until then, it's like, I'll stay on my toes until then, but I've been thinking about all that shit, for a long time, especially like May-ish when we weren't sure like how exactly COVID, because COVID was still like kind of like there, and then summertime came, and then whatever.
Yeah.
But then because I was texting him about stocks and stuff the other day, and then we ended the conversation and he's like, yeah, man, he had already mentioned the front porch sessions, like songs and conversations to me already. And he mentioned again, like, excuse me, in our group chat. And I was like, oh yeah, dude, like I'm ready. And I've already been debating, like, do I want to record it? Like I kind of do, like, and then I'm thinking like, oh, social distance, like we can set up the table outside, like we have a long table so we can like set up like 3 mics or 4 mics, whatever it is, depending on who. I'm hoping, it'd be at least us 3 and we'll just, have a conversation like we did today. But I was like, but yeah, I've already been, but it's funny because that's the new thing. It's like, oh, but social distancing. I'm like, well, it'll be good, to get everybody there. But then I do want to keep, decent, distances, especially at the beginning when I first get home. Cause it's like, it's just, I'm just over here and everybody's there. And it's like just different worlds. It's different worlds now, for now that, because everything's, the United States bubble has gone like secular to like states now because everybody has different rules and regulations for COVID and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, yeah, definitely been thinking about all of a sudden getting back home as soon as possible. But we can end this conversation as far as, like I said, as far as podcasts. So if you want to plug Xcelligence, it's been a while since we've done since we have a conversation period, but it's been a little bit. I feel like you're
plugged
anything? How the what? The what?
Plugged anything, or what do you mean?
Well, no, I want you to plug, but I guess I just want you to re-explain to the listeners like what Xcelligence is, and also a little bit of what you've done so far. Like, hey, like not necessarily who you're working with so far, but what have you learned that will then allow people to trust that, hey, you're gonna give solid work. I'll vouch for you because I'm biased, but I've seen your work because your standards are like mine. Like we have high individual standards, so I expect nothing less from you. You know what I mean? And I know that, but if you could convey that in this first plug to end this podcast of Xcelligence to the people.
I feel like it's a little bit weird to put it into just this is what it is, but for sure it started with Microsoft Excel like consulting and training. So basically any businesses out there or even individuals who have any type of like Excel project come in, or they want certain reports generated like automatically, like, hey, I just want to dump in these numbers here and have this report. So I'll prepare that stuff for you so that you work it. Or the other thing is I can do all the work for you. And it's all basically anything really Microsoft Excel related. My background is in banking mostly, but since I started Xcelligence, I've done work for insurance companies, for law firms, for trucking companies. So I'm kind of familiar with like a bill of lading and like everything. I guess how maybe a trucking owner would want to see like their financials. That's the other thing, preparing income statements and balance sheets for your business, on top of like the training. So if you want your staff to be better prepared for working with Excel, I can also train your staff on how to use it in general, and also very specific to like how you or your company needs to use it. So it's along with some bookkeeping. So
okay. What are some things?
I'm just gonna finish with that.
What are some things that you use Excel for yourself on a daily basis? What are some things that you do for yourself via Excel?
Not daily, but like
or
a couple
weekly,
times like a week.
Probably that you feel like you have to do. Like, hey, this is part of my weekly checks.
Probably. I don't want to call it like a budget process, but yeah, that's what it is. Kind of make sure that all my kind of like my bills, I have like, this is what I need to pay, this is the money I have coming in. So it's kind of like a budgeting process just to keep track of like finances. I do this on and off, but I also have what did I call it? It was like a activity or like a habit tracker. So all it is basically a list of like habits that I want to have either daily or every other day, every 2 days. And I just mark an X. And overall, like after the month, because I have it monthly, after the month is over, I'll see like what percentage of this habit I accomplished for the month.
I like
So,
that's cool.
you know,
what's a habit?
like-
What's a habit that you have on there?
I have stuff like cycling. I don't. I haven't gone on a bike ride in like a week and a half. But when I was doing it consistently, I didn't want to skip more than one day in a row, like 2 days in a row.
You hit good miles. How many miles did you have in 2020? Because you got
a little over 1,600 miles.
Yeah.
So
and what was your goal?
1,500.
Yeah. Well, we'll stop it there because like that's where it's like it's more the principle of like, hey, like that's still his, like I want to just illuminate the standard thing. Like, hey, like if you need work done on Excel and stuff like hey, Bryan can fucking help you out and get that stuff.
Yeah, like, and I'll attack anything. I recently got a gig from a lady in England who needed this timesheet, but the calculations needed to be very specific because at her company they don't pay overtime. Any hours you work over your scheduled hours are like comp time, so you can take those hours off like on another day. If you work 2 hours extra today, maybe tomorrow or next week or next month, you can come in 2 hours late or leave 2 hours early. So this spreadsheet needed to keep track of all the employees, like clock ins and outs, and have like a keep track of a balance of your, what they call it is toil, time off in lieu.
Yeah.
So it kept track of that toil balance, and then so that the person knew if they needed to work more hours or they had some hours,
comp time to
comp time
to get off.
So
that's cool, man. That's super cool. So there you
I'll
go.
attack anything.
Cool. That's very cool. That's super cool because I definitely want to get into that, but I feel like this is a good foundation and layout for a future conversation that we can have about Xcelligence because, there's just more stuff that as we're talking is like there's more stuff that we actually knocked off like a good chunk of like what I wanted to roll into like in this conversation because I feel like it was just necessary, but we can end there with Xcelligence and if you need Bryan, fucking hit him up. Do you have a website yet?
Yeah, I have one. Xcelligence.co. XCELLIGENCE.co.
Cool.
And you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram, and I think even Facebook at Xcelligence, XCELLIGENCE.
Oh yeah, cool, man.
So yeah,
this is a good conversation. This is productive. It was also needed. Like we FaceTime maybe a couple of times since like November, and different things that went on. Especially because you guys when that day that you guys called asking for my birthday because you were asking about because they were asking about the stone of my high school ring or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Like that was like the first time that I had actually like talked to you guys like more than a minute, more than text because we had basically just been texting and stuff. Because also I was also working like 100 hours a week, for the beginning of COVID. So I was like,
yeah.
But
yeah,
cool. We'll end the podcast there, and we'll see you all. Everything's in the show notes. I'll have Xcelligence in the show notes. I always say, if you want to talk, more in depth about anything you hear or anything, we have the at Moving with Life _podcast Instagram, and then podcast.millennial@gmail.com for any comments or concerns. Or I've always said, I feel like we'll get to a point where hopefully people will get comfortable with like, hey, like this is what's going on, and especially now that we've talked about recommendation letter, we talked about Xcelligence, we talked about we talked about a lot today. We covered 2 hours was not, we covered. I feel like we covered a lot of things that we said maybe before, but the more we say it, the more things we learn as individuals, and then bringing it out to this podcast. Hopefully, we'll start getting that feedback, slowly but surely. All right, that is the end of the podcast.